Technology.
Business.
Health.
The CBS Morning News. Watch it in the morning, use it all day.
This is CBS.
69 people are said to have perished when a charter flight en route to Minneapolis crashed moments after takeoff in Reno, Nevada. A WCCO team will report live from the scene.
That tragedy eclipsed a massive farm rally at the state capitol today where more than 15,000 area farmers protested the economic crisis facing agriculture. These stories are next on tonight's 6 p.m. report.
On the next Hour Magazine.
I just think of it as a job. I mean, I'm no different than anybody else.
Scott Baio tells Gary Collins about the tough job of a TV star. Plus, the powers behind TV with game show king Mark Goodson. Discover how you can win a new car or an appearance on Hour Magazine and Bonnie Strauss with a family lost at sea for 23 days.
We had to abandon ship.
On Hour Magazine. Tuesday morning at 9 on WCCO television.
They're big, slower moving, and often hidden by swirling clouds of snow. No matter how specially marked they are, they still get hit. Last year, people ran into Transportation Department snow removal equipment a record 73 times. We use less salt. We use less equipment. We could use fewer accidents on our roads this winter. So please, explore Minnesota safely. A public service message from the Minnesota Department of Transportation and this station.
Good evening, everyone. This is a special edition of the 6 p.m. report. Tonight we focus on the story that broke early this morning.
Very good. I'm glad to know that he's alive. He told me where he was sitting and in at a window seat. And I asked him, "Did you have your seatbelt fastened?" He says, "Yes." But he said his seat just went out, just blew out or something.
Good evening, everyone. 69 people, most of whom are believed to be Minnesotans, are believed dead. Their charter plane crashed shortly after takeoff in Reno, Nevada early this morning.
The charter flight was en route back to Minneapolis after a weekend gambling junket in Lake Tahoe. Only 3 people are believed to have survived the crash, and the only clue to the cause of the tragedy lies in the pilot's last transmission. When he reported that, the aircraft was vibrating. Don Shelby and a WCCO news team are on the scene in Reno. We have Don by telephone right now with a report. Don?
Pat, federal aviation officials and local investigators remain on the crash scene right now. Near the south end of the Reno Cannon International Airport. It's just about 5 miles, or 2 miles actually, from the airport itself where the plane came down. All of those individuals trying to answer questions about why the Charter Galaxy Flight 203 crashed during perfect weather conditions about 3 o'clock Twin Cities time. What is known tonight is that the plane, a Lockheed Electra 188, never got very far off the ground. It slammed into a lot filled with recreational vehicles. Witnesses say the plane bounced once, then erupted into flames. On board, 72 people, most of them from Minnesota, some coming back from a weekend of gambling in Reno, some from the Super Bowl. The biggest explosion occurred when the plane hit a propane tank at that recreational field. Rescuers found just 3 survivors among the wreckage. 69 others were dead at the scene. 3 people on the ground here in Reno were treated for minor injuries, one of those for cuts and bruises, 2 of those treated for shock. One of those on board the plane, a survivor, told authorities that something was wrong with the left wing as it took off. Others on the ground, witnesses, said that they thought that the left wing was on fire prior to the crash. Officials of the National Transportation Safety Board arrived on the scene this afternoon, began looking through the debris for clues as to exactly what happened. Moments before the crash, the pilot reported, as you said, Pat, that there were some problems on board. Now the search begins in earnest to determine exactly what those vibrations were all about, what caused the plane to crash and kill 69 people, most of them believed to be from Minnesota. We are here with a crew of 7 people, and we are going to put together a series of reports for 10 tonight, and then for a special series of reports at 10:30 to try to make some sense out of what here is a tragedy that is beyond words at this point. As people from Minnesota begin to fly in to help authorities try to try to identify the remains of those individuals in the crash of Flight 203. Pat.
All right, Don. Thank you very much, and we'll be back to you then again tonight at 10.
All right.
Complete identification of the victims is not expected for several days. However, Galaxy Airlines had promised to release a passenger list at about 4 o'clock this afternoon, but now the airline officials are saying that information will be made public later tonight. Uncertainty and anguish were evident among the family and all of the friends of people believed to have been on board that fatal flight. We have two reports, one from Karen Boros, the other from Mark Watts.
Sam Fergali went to Reno to get married, asking his brother Louis to go along as best man. Today, one family counts 3 dead and asks why.
The only reason he decided to go on this trip was because his brother was getting married and he asked him to be his best man, and he thought, well, as long as Sam had asked him to go, he would go. But he really wasn't looking forward to it. He wanted to stay home.
Louis Fergali was a father of 5, a man happiest when he was at home playing with his 2 grandchildren. Sam Fergali had 1 child, a daughter from a previous marriage. Sunday he called a friend to say the flight back would be late, but he was apparently in good spirits.
The first thing he said was say congratulations.
What'd you say?
I said congratulations. What for? And he told me he got married, and I said congratulations again. And
Annette Fergali said she has worried about her husband on other trips, but this morning, after hearing about the crash on the radio, she went back to sleep until friends started to call. It all seems to Annette like a bad dream.
I know that door's going to open and Louis going to just come in with all his suitcases and everything. I just know he's going to.
A crisis psychologist today said those who lost friends and relatives in the crash will at first become numbed and detached to protect themselves. But once those feelings of denial begin to fail them, they will feel guilty for not stopping those who died from making the trip. Karen Boris, WCCO Television News in the Twin Cities.
Shockwaves were felt by the university athletic community after they heard Bob Geary was missing. He was a confirmed passenger on Galaxy Flight 203. Players say the assistant athletic director kept everything on an even keel, and he was the backbone of the staff.
He did, work pretty close with us, and, he's always someone you could, just say hi to in the morning, or you just talk to him about, sports or current events or anything like that. He was, he really tried to, just be one of us. That's what was really great about him.
Geary has served as assistant athletic director for 5 years, and before that he was a ticket manager at the U of M. He is given the credit for continuous sellouts at Gopher athletic events and the recent success of the Gopher football team. Not only could he draw fans, but also smiles and laughter.
When he came up here, one of the things he said, not knowing anything about hockey, he said, well, if you have kickoff for football and tip-off for basketball, what do you have, puck-off for hockey?
At his house in St. Louis Park, his Monday paper had not been picked up, but his neighbors had heard the news.
Times that I've talked to him, I couldn't have asked for a nicer person to talk to and be sensible about everything.
Bob Geary was 55 years old. His wife was on the plane with him. His only daughter stayed behind in St. Louis Park. Mark Watts, WCCO Television News.
Relatives of 60-year-old Ray Phantom are fearful he is among the dead near Reno. His brother is grief-stricken at the thought and equally jarred by his own near miss.
Trips with my brother to Caesar's Palace, and I was going on this trip, but at the last minute didn't go because a friend of his wanted to go, and since I have gone several times, I didn't mind missing the trip. I know I'm going to miss him, and he's got a lot of friends here in the Twin Cities.
This afternoon, Lloyd Phantom was scheduled to fly to Reno to identify his brother's body. Ray Phantom owned a used car lot in Stillwater. He grew up on St. Paul's East Side. He is survived by 6 children. At the charter terminal where the Galaxy Airlines plane was to have landed, confusion and frustration ruled this day. Anxious friends and relatives, weary of waiting at home with no word, pushed through crowds of travelers only to be turned away empty-handed. Most were desperate, of course, to hear anything, even if it confirmed their worst fears.
To take care of right now. We have sons and daughters and families here that have been killed. Let's let's get somebody from the airlines or FAA helping these people. That's why we're here.
Airport officials couldn't begin helping or talking to worried friends and relatives until early this afternoon. And even then, of course, all they could do were offer kind words, some sympathy, but still no answers. For many, the snow covered untouched cars in the parking lot with the only clues that some passengers had not returned. Pat?
Only 3 people appear to have survived this crash. They include 45-year-old Bob Miggins, a Wayzata school teacher who was in critical condition following surgery for burns over more than 80% of his body. The other survivors are 41-year-old George Lamson from St. Paul and his 17-year-old son, George Jr. The elder Lamson remains in critical condition while his son is listed in satisfactory condition. Barb Brown talked with their family.
For St. Paul, mother and daughter, Adrian and Doris Lamson, this morning brought shock, fear, relief, and confusion.
And I asked, was he going to live? Is he going to be all right? And he says, well, he's okay right now. And as far as how he's going to be, I mean, we have to wait and see.
All Mrs. Lamson knew of her husband's condition was that he was in surgery and had a broken leg and head injuries. Her son, though, was well enough to talk to her from his hospital room.
He said they were up in the air, and then they were down. And he told me where he was sitting and at a window seat. And I asked him, did you have your seatbelt fastened? He says, yes. But he said his seat just went out, just blew out or something.
Mrs. Lamson and her daughter flew to Reno late this morning. At Wayzata High School, meanwhile, students and faculty worried and wondered. They hoped business education teacher Bob Miggins will pull through. They feared the worst for guidance counselor Bill Koski.
People are hurting because, these 2 men are sorely missed, and we're hoping Mr. Miggins is going to get better and things like this, and, we're not sure about Mr. Koski just yet, so we're hopeful.
Kids have been real concerned about it. They've been upset. A number of the kids that I have talked with have been in tears.
For 19 years, Chuck Mann was colleague and friend of both men.
I've just become numb. I mean, my feelings are such that it's just difficult for me to feel real right now. And I hope that by tomorrow I'll be somewhat back to normal.
Barb Brown, WCCO Television News.
In the aftermath of air crashes, there always seems to be one person who, for some reason or another, did not board the plane. Popular benchwarmer Bob Lertzema was to have been along on this Super Bowl junket, but he canceled last week, even though he said he considered rebooking up to the last moment.
Lockheed estimates that 100 Electras remain in service around the world. They are 25-year-old planes that have flown millions of miles without serious incident. But other Electras have not survived. They have crashed, and hundreds of their passengers have perished. Alan Cox examines the safety record of the Electra, and first, a look at the plane that went down in Nevada.
Flew it for presidential candidates during the primary campaigns last year. In May, during a trip by Jesse Jackson, an engine had to be shut down in midair. 4 days later, the plane bucked violently during a flight through the southeast. The FAA said it was the fault of the storm system, not the plane. Jackson switched to a Learjet the next day. It was the dawn of the jet age that hurt the business prospects of the Electra. Lockheed had the misfortune of trying to market a shiny, new, expensive, propeller-driven airliner just a few months after Boeing introduced the 707. Lockheed stopped making Electras in 1961 after only 4 years of production. Within a month of its introduction on the scheduled airlines, an Electra went into New York's East River and 63 people died. Within a year, 2 more Electras crashed, including a Northwest Orient flight that started in Minneapolis and went down in Indiana. The FAA ordered the planes to fly at half speed for 9 months while the wings were reinforced. The last Electra owned by a major airline was sold in 1977. But the plane had become popular among smaller carriers as the price of oil rose. The 4 turboprop engines were fuel efficient and quiet. 61 Electras remain registered in this country, many converted to freighters. But the accidents have continued. Last May, an Electra chartered to carry freight broke up over Pennsylvania, 4 dead. 12 days ago, another freighter crashed while trying to land in Kansas, 3 dead. Now federal officials face a 3rd Electra investigation. Alan Cox, WCCO Television News.
A spokesman for Galaxy Airlines says this Minnesota trip was a rare one for the company, that much of its business originates in its home state of Florida. It has 2 other electors, both used for freight. The airline started up less than 2 years ago. An FAA spokesman says it's been a good carrier with no pattern of safety problems. A Galaxy Flight 203 was one of more than 50 charters out of the Twin Cities each week of the winter. Travel agents say the cities are one of the largest users of air charter travel in the country. That's understandable, of course. The urge to escape Minnesota weather is always the primary reason. MLT Vacations, which is the largest travel wholesaler in the area, says it's never had an accident in its 20 years. The firm says charters are just as safe as the scheduled airlines because it says the government sets the same standards for both. Pat?
Tonight, WCCO is going to try and bring you up-to-the-minute developments from Reno throughout the evening. We will have updated reports, of course, on our 10 p.m. report. And then again at 10:30, immediately following the 10 p.m. report, we will also present a live special report devoted entirely to the plane crash. Don Shelby, Tony Vigneri, also Debbie Ely will be reporting live from Reno for that special. That's tonight at 10:30. The 6 p.m. report will continue in just a moment.
Wouldn't it be great if there was a soybean herbicide that worked one pass or two? That it controlled grasses and tough weeds like foxtail, pigweed, lamb's quarters, and help stop nightshade? One that'd keep on working right through harvest and yet not carry over to next season's crops. Well, now there is. It's called Sonalan from Elanco. Sonalan gives you season-long grass and weed control at a reasonable cost. Soybeans and Sonalan, they're made for each other.
Do you suffer like this with joint pain, back pain, stress? If you have trouble getting a good night's sleep, rise above all that with a genuine Wool Rest Sleeper. This fleecy, pure wool mattress pad from New Zealand is guaranteed to give you a better night's sleep. Try one for 90 nights at our risk. If at the end of that time you're not sleeping better, we'll refund your money in full. See, feel, and test the amazing Wool Rest Sleeper today at all Slumberland stores in the Twin Cities area. Check the white pages for the location nearest you.
The tragic crash of Galaxy Flight 203 has virtually eclipsed what farmers had hoped would be the big story of the day, that of a massive rally on the Capitol steps in St. Paul.
Several thousand Midwest farmers swarmed the state capitol to show solidarity for American agriculture. Record low crop prices and high interest rates are making this a year of so many farm foreclosures that farmers say it's the worst since the Great Depression. Rally organizers hope that today's protest will alert legislators and the public to the seriousness of their plight. Mike Strand reports.
America, America, God shed his grace on thee.
They came from throughout Minnesota and the Farm Belt to declare a national emergency. 7,500 farmers, teachers, and trade unionists braved a biting cold to save rural America and the family farm. They came to christen a new farm movement, protest current ag policies, and demand changes.
It is sad, but if we are going to save our rural communities, we must have an uprising the likes of which we have not seen.
We've had enough of the cuts of Ronald Reagan. We want dignity on the farms. We don't want it tomorrow. We want it today.
Rally organizers demanded state lawmakers impose a meaningful moratorium on farm foreclosures. And until the industry regains its feet, farmers also want guaranteed crop prices and operating loans. Political leaders empathized but labeled it a congressional problem.
The federal government must act, and we in state government will do everything in our power to ease your pain, but we cannot solve this problem by ourselves.
I will tell you now that the best thing and the first thing state government can do to address your problem is to get its own budget and its own taxes under control.
But rally organizers say the bottom line is for Minnesota farmers to continue to tell their tale of financial plight to lawmakers, both state and federal. They have organized a mass rally in Washington, D.C. for next month to do just that. Mike Strand, WCCO Television News, St. Paul.
Meanwhile, the lawmakers at this Capitol responded to this rally on several different fronts today. For instance, the Republican-controlled House Agriculture Committee heard from the protesters at a special hearing in St. Paul's National Guard Armory. House DFLers, meanwhile, unveiled a 3-point farm rescue plan. That was shortly before the noon rally. The Democratic-controlled Senate says it plans to suspend its rules tomorrow to consider a temporary 120-day farm mortgage moratorium in which the state would pick up part of the cost of interest payments for financially strapped farmers. Pat?
While the cold has abated in Minnesota, our nation's capital is still paralyzed with sub-zero temperatures. Many distressed non-inaugural spectators are blaming the weather for a disappointment of presidential magnitude. Skip Loescher reports.
It is the coldest inaugural day in history. All outside activities were canceled. So the 300 or so Minnesota Republicans who came here had to settle for watching the official ceremonies the same way they could have watched if they'd stayed at home, on television.
I would rather be seeing it live. Everyone would. But as far as being silly and not being practical, I'd rather be here.
And warmer.
And warmer, much warmer.
But members of the Princeton, Minnesota High School band felt the frustration more keenly. They wanted to march in an inaugural parade no matter how cold it was.
I'm really angry because we spent a lot of time doing this, getting prepared, raising the money to come, and now it's called off.
The Princeton Tigers never did get a chance to play for the president, but they did get a chance to see the First Family in person this afternoon as a college All-America band performed. But again, the only way we could see the event was on television. Skip Loescher, CCO News, Washington.
3 Bemidji area tax protesters on trial in St. Paul today again demanded that the case be dismissed. Wilhelm Schmidt, speaking as the primary attorney for the alleged co-conspirators, asked dismissal on the grounds that the defendants are governed by common law and not by government statute. And he further claimed that federal Judge Edward Devitt is not a legal judge since the Constitution says judges' compensation or pay shall not be diminished, and since Devitt pays taxes. He is not a judge, he says, under the Constitution. Judge Devitt will rule on the dismissal motion tomorrow.
The Twin Cities sky is scheduled to be sunny. The temperature is higher tomorrow. And the reign of Herb Brooks as New York Rangers head coach has ended. The stories are up next on the 6 p.m. report.
Don't let winter fuel bills stick it to you. Call your Minnesota Energy Information Center for straight-to-the-point answers to save you energy and money.
Want to liven up those old familiar dinners?
Brush up on your chicken.
Just blend 2 parts Heinz 57 sauce and 1 part honey.
Brush up spirits too.
And you've got a sensational glaze for most any kind of meat.
Brush up on your ham.
Make a little extra for dipping.
For a lively taste that's new.
Brush up with Heinz 57 sauce and honey. Takes just a few seconds.
Adds just the right spice.
Brush up.
This year, we challenge you to compare corn insecticides. Compare and you'll pick the one that stands the test of performance and price. Thimet. Thimet controls corn rootworms, guaranteed. Thimet controls wireworms, white grubs, and seed corn maggots, guaranteed. Plus, Thimet saves you $2 to $4 per acre over other leading brands. So if you really compare soil insecticides on both performance and price, you'll pick Thimet. It stands the test.
DeKalb Pfizer Genetics.
Think you'll make it back?
How about it, Grandpa?
If it all looks like this, I kind of doubt it.
Bring the truck. I'm already full.
Might as well go.
Okay.
That first pass says it all.
One pass proves you can't beat XL8.
Well, this past weekend, I think it's the coldest weather I've ever been in my life.
It really was. From 24 below to 24 above in about 36 hours, though. Our weather guide indicates that we've really warmed up. We're 24 degrees outside for a high today after a early morning low of 8 degrees above zero, so we've been above zero now for at least a few hours here in the Twin Cities. Where'd all the cold air go that we had over us? Well, to the east and to the south, producing teens all the way down into Florida, causing some problems there with vegetables and citrus crops. As cold as 23 below in Knoxville, Tennessee overnight last night. Record lows all over the place. Those look like this. Those that are outlined in red are the coldest temperatures they've ever recorded at those weather stations, and some of those records date all the way back into the 1800s. Well, all that air is going to slip off through them tonight, but yet this afternoon, Atlanta, Georgia, only 17 degrees. High pressure still entrenched throughout the nation's midsection, and we're trying to get a little disturbance forming out here to the west of us. But by tomorrow, this weather map is going to produce a little bit of snow through here, but high pressure and a moderating air mass for the southeast. If they can just make it through tonight, tomorrow looks like temperatures at least will start to recover a little bit. Our high temperatures will be in the 40s and the 50s in the southeast, but 30 still down to the Gulf Coast. For us, temperatures in the 20s, and we're not going to look at below zero temperatures at least for another couple of days. Our current conditions were clear with 21, northwest winds 24, still gusting to 31 for a wind chill of 13 degrees below zero. Our forecasts then for clear and windy conditions tonight, winds northwest at 10 to 25 miles an hour, a low of around 8 degrees. Tomorrow will be sunny. Winds will still be out of the northwest at 10 to 20, but again, up to around 25 degrees. Tomorrow night, mostly clear with a low of 9, and for Wednesday, we'll be partly cloudy with a high of 25 degrees. Well, the extended forecast isn't even too bad. We should drop down to around 0 or slightly below by Friday and Saturday. Otherwise, we're going to remain with temperatures in the teens to low 20s.
All right. Do you think we'll have any more of those really cold spells?
I doubt it. Not that cold again.
I hope
please.
Okay.
How quickly the mighty fall in professional sports. Herb Brooks is out looking for a job now.
Well, I talked to him a few weeks ago, and I thought he had told me that he had a no clause in his contract. He could not get fired. Apparently, the Rangers found a loophole there somewhere.
Nah, it doesn't bother those guys. They're ruthless.
So the man who created the 1980 heroics at Lake Placid, New York, former St. Paul Johnson star, former Gopher hockey coach, Herb Brooks, has been fired by the New York Rangers. Herbie was called a coaching genius after the miracle of the Olympics, but there were no miracles with the Rangers this year. Ironically, it was general manager Craig Patrick who fired Brooks. You might recall it was Brooks who brought Patrick out of hockey obscurity to be his assistant coach with the 1980 Olympic team. Quite a turnaround. Brooks' overall record in 3.5 years with the Rangers, take a look. Many coaches get raises for records like that. This season's record, 15, 22, and 8. General manager Craig Patrick said the team needed a change to get going in the other direction. Patrick will succeed Brooks as head coach. The North Stars, meanwhile, are in Chicago tonight to play the Blackhawks. I talked with Stars general manager Lou Nanne today regarding a possible position with Herb Brooks with the North Stars organization. Nanne says he'd be happy to have Brooks in the organization, but until Glenn Sonmore decides he's no longer enjoying coaching, he is the coach. It did appear Nanne was leaving the door open, wide open, for what many feel is inevitable, that Herb Brooks will someday be the head coach of the Minnesota North Stars. Well, from a firing to a hiring, Jerry Burns, former offensive coordinator under Bud Grant, is back. Only this time with the Vikings with a new title. Burns will be the offensive coordinator and assistant head coach. Super Bowl 19 is finally over. What happened yesterday in Palo Alto was a San Francisco team which broke the backs of the Miami Dolphins 38-16 and broke the NFL record for the most wins in a season, 18. Miami held the old mark with 17. Mark Rosen was at the Super Bowl.
The much ballyhooed quarterback duel was a one-sided affair. Joe Montana has never looked better, and neither have the 49ers. Montana set Super Bowl records for passing and rushing. He threw 3 touchdown strikes and had the Miami defense in a total state of disarray. Dan Marino proved he is human after all. The 49ers defense was too good. They made life miserable for Marino, forcing him outside. Marino is a great passer, but a rollout quarterback he is not. The over 2,700 journalists covering this event heard 49er coach Bill Walsh call this the greatest moment of my career. All-pro tackle Keith Fahnhorst of Minnesota now has 2 Super Bowl rings in 4 years. Famed artist Leroy Neiman sketched Fahnhorst while Keith told the world this was a weekend he'll never forget.
I'll tell you, it's been a hell of a weekend. I had a little girl was born yesterday, 10 o'clock. My face is so sore from grinning. I don't know if I can take much more, but I'll have to grin a little more.
Glad the season's over on a great note, though.
Oh yeah, it was more than anybody had ever expected. It was fantastic.
Miami's only touchdown was scored by tight end Dan Johnson, who played at Cooper High School and Golden Valley Lutheran College before going on to Iowa State, then the Dolphins. Johnson admitted the pressure may have gotten to Marino.
He did seem a little, different, but, jitters, you get rid of that right away, in the first couple plays. but I've seen them play, a lot better game. I've seen everybody on our team play a lot better game, though, too.
Most everyone felt this would be a game that would finally match all the Super Bowl hype. But the 49ers made Miami look like a very average football team, climaxing a near-perfect season for San Francisco. This is Mark Rosen, WCCO Sports, reporting from Stanford Stadium.
And cold wiped out President Reagan's parade, but 500,000 for the 49ers today.
My heavens. We have just a moment to pick up Don Shelby near Reno, Nevada for any possible new information. Don?
Just a reminder to you, Pat and Dave, to everyone in the Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota area that we're going to be here throughout the evening and throughout tomorrow, staying with the NTSB, with the FBI's identification unit, and we're going to be preparing a series of reports for the 10 p.m. news tonight, and then for a special report that we're going to prepare for 10:30 Minnesota time. The entire crew here, 7 of us, are going to be working throughout the night and into the morning hours, trying to do our best to get some understanding, some knowledge of the individuals who will board Flight 203. We'll have those reports tonight at 10 and again at 10:30.
Very good. Thank you very much, Don.
You said it all. We hope you'll be with us again tonight at 10 and 10:30.
Good night, everyone.
In Santa Clara County, California, a few miles north of the Monterey Peninsula, they grow a remarkably firm, bright red tomato. Stouffer's calls it the perfect murrieta. Not quite as large as a tennis ball, it's juicy and meaty and filled with the hearty, rich taste of a great sauce tomato. Now you know one of the reasons why Stouffer's spaghetti with meatballs is as good as can be.
Looks like you're into winning.
You bet.
Then today Chevrolet has a car for you, Cavalier.
Come on in, and you'll know. Turn it on, let it go. It's at your command.
2 liters of electronically fuel-injected power, front-drive agility, and optional sports suspension, Cavalier. Grab one.
If this is today's Chevrolet, it's a winner.
Drive today, Chevy. Live today, Chevy.
Live it.
Chevy.
WCCO Television, Minneapolis, St. Paul.